Hello, everybody. I was just talking and still muted. Sorry. We are live. I'm excited today. A little bit later than yesterday, but hopefully, people will get a chance to check in and get some of this good information. Or they'll be up on the live will be up on Facebook. It'll be up on our Instagram page, and it will also be up on our YouTube page. So, any of the information that you want to go back and grab, you can go back and grab it. Also, I'm going to encourage you now and at the end to make sure that you go to our webpage, www.steampowereducation.com, and make sure that you sign up for our mailing list. And that way, anything that we share here, we do a great job of creating these very easy to read, very easy to follow one pagers that you can grab and keep with all the information that we share. And so become a part of our mailing list. Go to www.steampowereducation.com if you have not yet already, and sign up for our mailing list so that you can get all the information that is coming out on our lives. And so I'm excited to see everybody here today. I'm excited to share. Today is specifically about math. We are talking about how the ACT is changing in math. And math is kind of almost like a hit or miss. You've got kids who love math and they're going to kill it every time. And then you've got kids that are really struggling with math and they, really just need a way to ease that math anxiety. And so today we're going to talk about what's new on the ACT for the math section of the test. And, what I love about the things that ACT has done, and I said this yesterday, these are things that we've been hearing kids say for forever. And it sounds like the ACT organization is listening to what students and teachers are saying about the struggles that kids are having with certain sections of the test. And they're really doing a great job of responding to that. And so today we're going to talk specifically about the math section and how it is different and how your students can take advantage of the differences on the math section of the test. And so we talked a little bit yesterday about some of the changes, and it was very overall. I do want to name too, and we're gonna do a specific live just about accessibility for students who have accommodations. But just know that if you choose to take the digital test, there are several online accommodations that are available for students who need those accommodations and modifications when it's time for test taking. So the same things that they see on their standardized tests, they will see them on the ACT, which is great. If they take the digital test, they have the option for text to speech. They have the option to zoom in on the content so they can see it more carefully. Screen readers, answer masking, which is just hiding answer choices. All of these different tools will be available for your students. And so, I just want to make that known as well, how powerful it is to put those accommodations in the hands of our students who are used to being able to use them and, who need them to even the playing field and make sure that they have, a fair and equal education and a fair and equal shot. All right, so math. We're not going to talk about accessibility today. Let's start out with just the content format. So, of course, we said before that there are fewer answer choices. We're used to the math section being A through E answers. It's now A through D. So only 4 answer options instead of 5. And so this simplifies the process of being able to eliminate wrong answers. And it's kind of increases the odds of guessing correctly, like not a great deal, but slightly increases the odds, because now if you have to guess, you're guessing 1 out of 4 instead of 1 out of 5. And if you've been able to eliminate some answers as incorrect, that increases the chances even more. And so if your students have done any sort of ACT prep, they've probably heard, don't leave any answer choices blank, right? Like they should never leave anything blank. And then always use the process of elimination, especially in math. If you're solving, look for those answers that come close to or are in the same range as the answer that you come up with when you solve your problem. And so if they're able to do that and they leave a question and want to come back at the end and just make sure that they've answered everything, if they're choosing between 2 choices or 3 choices, it's a much better shot at choosing or selecting or, educatedly guessing the right answer is much easier when there's only 4 choices to choose from. So that's huge. There's also a greatly reduced number of questions. So the math section was 60 previously. It has now been reduced to 45 questions. And so the overall test is being streamlined. It's not removing a whole lot of major content, but proportionately it looks different. And, I tell my kids this all the time, the ones that come to ACT prep, you know, calculus, advanced math, trigonometry, you've got to have a solid grasp of those things if you're trying to score between the 30 and the 36. If you're pushing yourself beyond that 30 mark, it's going to be hard to get beyond the 30 on the math section if you don't have a strong grasp of that upper level math. However, for my students that are trying to score 20 to 29, like up in the upper range, a moderate understanding of it, but in the 20 to 25 range, if you are good with functions, algebra and geometry, you really are solid gold. And so reminding students that, that part, and we can kind of share a little bit so you can look, for mathematics, it's 45 questions, 50 minutes. It used to be 60 questions, 60 minutes, but it's 45 questions, 40 and 50 minutes. So when you look at it, 80% of the test is students preparing for higher level math. All right. And then 20% is just integrating essential skills. So just those problem solving skills that kids need to be good at anyway. You're going to see this anywhere you look at, the breakdown of how ACT questions look. You're going to see this field test embedded part. That part, the ACT throws questions in there as field test questions to kind of get some live data for how students perform on specific types of questions. We don't know which questions are field test questions and which questions are actually being scored, but just know about 10% of the 45 questions are just field test questions. 80%, look at this, number and quantity. That's stuff that kids have been doing since kindergarten. It builds and builds and builds, but number sense is something they started their foundation of way back when. Then there's also 20% algebra, about 20% functions, about 20% geometry, and then statistics and probability end up being about 12 to 15%. So for your students, when you're sharing this information with them, this should give them, a little bit of, peace surrounding how they approach the math test, because this algebra and geometry is something that many kids take in 8th grade, but most of them take in 9th and 10th grade, and they get it out of the way early. And so you can take that ACT after 10th grade or at the beginning of 11th grade, and knowing that I've got everything that I need for, 60% of the test. That's huge. That's a lot of content that you already have, you've already secured, and you don't have to think about it. So, I wanted to make sure I put these numbers up so that you and your family and your students, they are aware that, 45 questions is greatly reduced. Now, the calculator has not changed. The calculator policy has not changed. And what I'll do is when I'm done, or I might be able to do it now, is put in the comments the calculator policy from the actual ACT website, so that way you can go and see the calculator policy for yourself. But it's important. And what I always tell students is, do not go and get a brand new calculator just before the ACT. You don't want to be using a calculator that you are not familiar with right before you get ready to take the test. Use the calculator that you've used in class and determine which calculators are okay before you get to the point where you have to check and say, oh, I've been using a illegal calculator that I can't take into that ACT room. So I posted in the comments the website on Facebook and YouTube. You can find the ACT website, go to their calculator policy, and they will lay it all out for you. But that policy, if you have a policy from the previous test, it has not changed. So that's great for students. And like I said, those math skills are not unfamiliar. We've seen them before. The scoring system is not changing. It's still on a scale from 1 to 36. And so the predictive value, and we say predictive, I use that term loosely because, as we know, we have kids that struggle with the ACT and go off to do great in college, and we have kids who do great on the ACT and find lots of challenges when they go to college. So predictive, the way the ACT defines it, is just they're ready to do, if they do well on the ACT, they are prepared to do well on early core content subjects in the, first year, usually core content subjects in college. And so the predictive nature has not changed. They just have more time, 45 questions in 50 minutes. And think about what that means for your students. They used to have a minute per question, 60 questions, 1 minute each. Now they have about 1 minute and 7 seconds, and they will not use 1 minute and 7 seconds for several of these questions. But what it does for them is it really slows down the anxiety and gives them some time to pace themselves. So when they're taking the test, they can pace themselves. They don't have to rush. They have an extra 7 seconds, which seems like a little bit, but it translates to about, almost 5.5 extra minutes. And if you've ever talked to a kid right after the ACT, they say things like, man, I needed 5 more minutes on that math test. That's what they have now. They have this extra 5 minutes to just kind of slow down, pace themselves. And again, it's going to translate to way more than 5 minutes because they will not use that minute and 7 seconds for every question. But it is very helpful to have that extra time. It slows down the pace, like I said, and it reduces that rushed feeling that you feel on math problems. And then overall, the whole test is shorter, and so there's less fatigue. So your test takers are now testing for about 2 hours and 5 minutes for the three major sections. Now remember, for the ACT now, the composite score consists of only English, math, and reading. You can opt out of the science test if you're not going into a degree or a major that is any of the STEM content areas, then you can opt out of science. You don't even have to take, and even with the science, it is still shorter. But your composite score with reading, English, and math can be compiled within 125 minutes of taking a test. That is a reduction of almost an hour, more than an hour, which means like a more efficient test day and just a lot less exhaustion for our test takers. Now, again, just to recap, go back to the ACT.org website and grab this calculator policy. It's there. You can grab it whenever you need to. It should be uh easily, it's just a PDF you can download. And like I said, it's if you have one from previous tests, it's the exact same thing. Again, the ACT is going to remain the same. So you won't, sorry, you won't see the scale change between 1 and 36. 36 is the highest score you can get, and a 1 is the lowest. And then you will still be able to choose between paper and pencil options. There are a lot of things that I like about the digital test, but the one thing that I do want to name is if your kids are now, these other generations are much more familiar with a paper and pencil test. And so we feel um comfortable with the paper and pencil test, and we want to push our kids. But if they are taking majority digital tests in school, your kids are conditioned to thrive in that type of test taking environment. Also, if they're used to digital accommodations, if your students are used to those digital accommodations, used to being able to use those digital tools to annotate and to, mask questions, which means, eliminate questions that are not correct. If they're used to that, you want to continue to give them those options. You don't want to take that from them. So those things are super, super, super helpful. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you are driving home, when they're in classes. And, part of the reason why we do so much work with schools and with teachers is because what we realize is there's so much power in the hands of the education system to make sure that our kids are prepared for this assessment. We can, at Steam Power, we do a lot of great work with strategy and understanding the test and approach and goal setting and post-secondary preparation. We've got all that covered. But a kid that is in a classroom and not really understanding the connection between what they're doing every day and what they're going to be expected to do on this assessment is already at a disadvantage. And so as parents, if you're watching this, teachers, if you are watching this, 100% go back to telling them in those math classrooms, listen, if you're in an algebra class, you need to know 20% of the ACT is algebra. So, lock in, ask your teachers questions like, what is this going to look like on the ACT? Or do you have any sample ACT questions that go along with this type of content that we're learning, or whatever the language is that they use? Push your students to ask those types of questions, because teachers, they have lesson plans, they have things in place, they have a plan for the day. Your teachers are prepared, but teachers love to have students ask questions like that. Even if they don't, I guarantee if your kid is sitting in a high quality math teacher's class, any teacher's class, and they say, hey, I'm looking for, what this looks like on the ACT, it's easy to find, and they'll go find it. And if they can't, then they will reach out to someone who can help them to find it. And so make sure that, that's the biggest part of understanding this. It's not just, oh, you're not going to remember all these percentages, but as a family, push your kids. You're sitting in that algebra class, you're sitting in that geometry class. Just know it's not for nothing. Like, this could be, the difference between a 25 and a 29. This could be the difference between a 19 and a 21. And we're all looking for that number. In Louisiana, we're looking for that number to make sure we get that extra TOPS money. And so you want to push your kids to make the connection, and to help their teachers and ask their teachers to help them make the connection between what it is they're learning in class and how they're going to see it on the actual assessment. And so those are the big changes for math. Again, less time, less questions, less answer choices, and more opportunities to guess the correct answer. There's just so many ways that, like I said, ACT has done such a phenomenal job of listening to students and making sure that, they give them the best test taking experience that they can possibly get. The rest is up to us to make sure that they're prepared. And that's the reason why we're hopping on live regularly to share this information. Hope it was helpful. Again, you can always go sign up for our mailing list at www.steampowereducation.com, and we will send as many notes and informations, and we love a good info doc. And so we'll send you the info doc in our newsletters, and you'll get this information that you need to make sure that, you've listened to it, your kids can watch it, and then you can go and refer to it again to make sure that they get what they need and they have what they need. So I hope this was helpful. We'll be back to talk about the grammar and reading sections of the test. So look for us tomorrow. We're going to be live tomorrow, and then we're going to take a break because Good Friday is Friday, and then everybody's celebrating Resurrection Sunday. And so we'll be back. We'll come back Thursday, and then we'll come back again on Monday after Easter to talk some more about accessibility and, those options that you have for your students who want to use those accommodations and who need to use those accommodations and modifications. So thank you guys. As usual, I'm just so grateful. Onward and upward, and we will see you again tomorrow at 3 o'clock.